I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Iraq. Will there be U.S.-Iran cooperation? As I speak to you, headlines are dominated across the world by the prospect that two longtime foes, the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran, will come together and cooperate to fight an insurgency inside Iraq. But how did this come about? And are we really going to see an effective U.S.-Iranian alliance? Here's your beginner's guide. Point 1, the background. The U.S. and Iran have actually had quite common interest in Iraq for the last few years. After the disaster of the American occupation in 2003, including the rejection of Iranian efforts to help out with a post-Saddam Iraq, the two countries settled in different ways on support of a government led by a man named al-Malaki in Baghdad. Al-Malaki was seen as the strong man, the man who could provide for security and stability after years of destruction, deaths, and insurgency. For the Iranians, Maliki, a Shia, represented a majority Shia population which was linked to Iraq's own 95% Shia community. For the United States, al-Maliki represented the safe pair of hands, the one who could be relied upon to control Iraqi security services and prevent the country, it was thought, from falling into fragmentation and complete disorder. It was a convenient alliance, but it is one which is now under strain. So, point 2. Does this mean that the U.S. and Iran will now cooperate to defend al-Maliki against an insurgency which has taken major Iraqi cities in the west and north of the country? Well, here's the way the argument works out. The Iranians have already put in 2,000 militia and troops on the ground, including elements of the elite Quds force, to support their political and economic interest in Iraq. The head of the Quds force, a very powerful man named Qasem Soleimani, has been advising Baghdad. Now, if the United States comes in and provides air support to challenge the insurgents, striking them from the air, while Iran helps organize Iraqi defense forces on the ground, this could hold a defense line north of Baghdad and begin to push the insurgents back. Perhaps it could eventually take back cities like Mosul, like Tikrit. Okay, it's an interesting theory, but will it happen in practice? Point 3, the problems from the United States. Look, it's one thing to say that you're going to defend Iraq and that you have to work with the Iranians. It's another to actually do it. There are certain congressmen who do not love Tehran who have embraced the idea, such as Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. But there are other congressmen, say a senator like John McCain, who says that under no circumstances should the U.S. work with the Iranians. But more important than this chatter in Congress, and indeed amongst the American public, is this calculation within the U.S. government. If you support the Iranians and if you work with them, they are the force which has the ascendant role, the most important political influence with Baghdad. So you're not just saving the al-Maliki government, you could be basically saving Iranian primacy. Does the United States really want to do that? That's the question the Obama administration is wrestling with. And that's why you're getting divided signals out of Washington right now. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry will say, yes, we're considering this, we'll talk to the Iranians. The State Department can have tentative negotiations with the Iranians on the sidelines of nuclear talks in Vienna. But the Pentagon and other elements from the White House are being much more cautious. No. There will be no military or strategic cooperation with the Iranians, even if we have general discussions with them. Point 4, the problems in Iran. But if you think the barriers in the United States to cooperation with the Iranians are great, that's nothing compared to what's happening in Tehran. Last week, as insurgents began to move on Baghdad from the north, the Rouhani government put out signals that said, yes, we'll work with the Americans. After all, we're influential in Iraq, Syria, and the Middle East. We can cooperate with the Americans to help resolve this matter. Within 24 hours, other groups in Iran hit back. And these were powerful groups. The Speaker of Parliament, the Secretary of the National Security Council, who not only said, we won't cooperate with the United States, they said that it was the United States who was responsible for the Iraqi insurgency. They somehow had created the jihadist menace caused the Islamic State of Iraq. And then the Supreme Leader's office weighed in. In fact, the Supreme Leader had already prompted Larijani to make his intervention And now his office made it clear in no uncertain terms that it saw the United States as the sponsors of terrorism in Iraq, not only in the past, but now. The Rouhani government has been eclipsed. It is unlikely at this point, without a significant change, that the president can overrule the supreme leader or convince the supreme leader that it is necessary to work with the United States if the al-Malaki government is to survive. But, point 5, the nuclear solution. The one way this may come about actually has to do with a related matter. Currently, the United States and other countries in the 5+1 powers are discussing with Iran how to get a comprehensive nuclear settlement. The 5th round of talks is being held in Vienna this week. If, and it is a big if there can be a nuclear agreement, then this may unlock the door to cooperation. Just as the fear of crisis in Iraq may push both sides to try to resolve the nuclear issue before a July 20th deadline, so a resolution of the nuclear issue means that the sides can now say, maybe now we can put aside decades of animosity and cooperate on regional matters. Thus the two issues walk hand in hand. But they walk hand in hand on a very uncertain path. At this point, it is not likely we will get a nuclear agreement within the next month. Those talks will probably continue through the summer and autumn. And so we're back to the original conundrum. How can two countries, the United States and Iran, who fundamentally distrust each other, set aside that animosity, even when each has an interest in maintaining the government in Iraq? At this point, it looks like a riddle, an enigma, which cannot be solved. I'm Scott Lucas, and this is today's EA Worldview on Iraq.